They bulldozed my garage while I was at work. No warning, no letter. Just tire tracks, shattered bricks, and a pile of splintered wood where my father's legacy, and half my life, used to be. But what they didn't know was that underneath that garage was a bunker. And in that bunker, cameras, rolling, for months, capturing everything the HOA thought they could get away with, every shady deal, every midnight meeting, every time Karen Mitchell, the so-called president of Meadowview Estates, used her clipboard like a weapon. They thought they buried me under the rubble. They didn't realize they'd just triggered their own destruction. When I moved to Meadowview Estates 2 years ago, I was done with chaos. The city had chewed me up. Sirens, scams, a break-in that nearly cost me my dog Baxter. I just wanted peace. I wanted to build furniture in my dad's old garage, live quietly, and maybe even plant some tomatoes. The garage wasn't pretty, but it was sturdy, built in '83 by my father and reinforced over the years. What no one knew was that I'd converted the underground storm cellar beneath it into a private security hub. After what happened at my last house, I wasn't about to let my life be caught off guard again. Motion sensors, night vision, cloud backups. I'd become obsessed with protection. Enter Karen Mitchell. She greeted me on day one with a polished smile and a copy of the HOA handbook printed in color. "We take our community standards seriously here," she said, glancing disapprovingly at my tool trailer in the driveway. I smiled politely. "I just want to live in peace." She chuckled. "That's what they all say at first." At first I played along. I kept my grass at regulation length. I parked my truck between the lines. I even removed the American flag from my porch when they said it was too large for seasonal display. Still, the notices came. One for excessive hammering sounds during daylight hours. Another for a garage light left on overnight. Then, the kicker, a safety inspection of my garage, unannounced, with Karen and 2 board members snapping photos like they were casing a crime scene. I didn't know then what she was planning. But I started to notice the pattern, how she'd linger during her morning walks, eyeing my driveway. How her notes grew longer, her finds more creative. Neighbors whispered that Karen had been on a mission to beautify the neighborhood by removing unsightly structures. I didn't think they meant me. Until I came home one Tuesday and saw the yellow caution tape. The garage was gone. Ripped from the earth. Demolished. No vote. No notice. Just Karen, standing on my driveway, holding out a form like it was a trophy. "This structure violated Section 12.3, she said. "Non-standard materials, risk of collapse. It had to go." I stared at the flattened space, dust still rising in the golden hour sun. My tools, my bench, my memories. Gone. "You bulldozed it," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "It was for the good of the community," she replied, and walked away. But that night, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I walked to the back of the property, past the wreckage, to the shed, and through the hidden storm hatch. I descended. The lights in the bunker flickered to life. Every camera feed was intact. Every recording uploaded. And on one of them, dated 3 days earlier, I watched Karen step into my driveway, whisper into her phone, and say, "Once it's gone, he can't prove anything. By the time he reacts, we'll have approval retroactively. Trust me, he's just another quiet type." I hit pause. Everything went silent except for the hum of the drives. They thought I was just a guy with a dog and a garage. They didn't know I was the one holding every receipt. And tomorrow? Tomorrow I'd start knocking on their doors. 3 nights after the demolition, the Meadowview Community Hall was packed. Rows of folding chairs creaked under the weight of neighbors gripping their coffee cups tighter than usual. Murmurs buzzed. The air felt electric, but not in a good way. At the front stood Karen Mitchell, clipboard in hand, lips pursed, pastel blazer wrinkle-free as always. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that said, "This meeting is a formality. I've already won." She had no idea what was coming. I waited in the back corner, hoodie up, flash drive in my pocket, heart thumping so hard it felt like a warning drum. Then, as she tapped her glittery pink gavel and began her usual preamble about community values, I stepped forward, slow, calm, deliberate, and walked up to the projector table. Excuse me, I said. I have something the board needs to see. Karen blinked. This isn't the time for personal grievances, Mr. Thompson. This isn't personal, I replied, plugging in the drive. It's evidence. The first clip rolled. Karen in my driveway, whispering into her phone 3 days before the bulldozers came. Once it's gone, he can't prove anything. He won't fight back. Gasps. A few heads turned toward Karen. Others froze, eyes locked on the screen. Then came clip 2. A private HOA meeting held at Karen's house, illegal, unlogged, with wine glasses clinking as bylaws were rewritten behind closed doors. Then clip 3. Karen giving orders to a contractor. Use community funds. Say it's landscaping. They won't read the breakdown. The murmurs became full voices now. That's our dues! Someone shouted from the crowd. Mrs. Rodriguez, usually the quietest neighbor on the block, stood up with trembling hands. She fined me $400 for wind chimes, she said. Wind chimes! Karen tried to cut in. This is clearly a doctored smear. I have the raw time-stamped files, I said, all uploaded to a public archive. Every clip you just saw has metadata and location data. I didn't touch a single frame. Then I pulled out printed QR codes and handed them to the board. Want to verify it for yourselves? Be my guest. Karen's mask cracked. People, please, she cried out, voice rising a pitch too high. Do you want this place to fall apart? This is chaos. Gerald Simmons, the HOA treasurer, who until that moment had never spoken more than a greeting at these meetings, stood up slowly. I've reviewed the finances, he said, his voice calm but firm. There are discrepancies, unexplained withdrawals, and no records for this so-called emergency demolition. Someone in the back shouted, You tore down a man's garage without permission. Karen's face flushed crimson. He was non-compliant. The structure was unsightly, unsafe. Another neighbor stood. That garage was his father's. He used it to build things for the community. He repaired my son's bike in there. You didn't just tear down a building, you tore up a legacy. I didn't expect the lump in my throat. I looked around the room and saw what I hadn't noticed before. Not just anger, not just shock. Solidarity. Years of quiet resentment finally breaking through the surface like roots cracking pavement. And just like that, Karen lost the room. Gerald turned to her. I motion we call for a vote, effective immediately, to suspend President Mitchell from her duties pending a formal audit. A pause, then a wave of voices. I second it. All in favor? Nearly every hand rose. Karen froze, clipboard trembling in her grip. You can't do this, she whispered. I built this neighborhood. No, I said, walking back to my seat. You ruled it. There's a difference. 2 days passed. No morning clipboard walks, no emails, no Karen. Some thought she was gone for good. I knew better. Because control freaks don't vanish. They regroup. The neighborhood was quiet in a way that felt wrong, like someone holding their breath behind a curtain. Then came the flyers. First, one under my windshield. Know who's watching you? Maybe you're next. Anonymous. Printed. Glossy. The same bold font Karen always used. A second one appeared in Mrs. Rodriguez's mailbox, with a photo of her son washing her car circled in red marker. A third taped to my daughter's driver's side window. It wasn't just intimidation. It was surveillance. I rushed to the bunker that night. My cameras hadn't missed a frame. The monitors flickered to life. 24 screens of stillness, motion-triggered history, cloud backups. Then I saw her. Karen. 3:42 a.m., slipping through her backyard like a ghost. She unlocked her pool shed, knelt, lifted a floorboard, and disappeared underground. I watched in stunned silence as 10 minutes passed. Then she emerged, clutching a black duffel bag and a thick file folder, looking over her shoulder before vanishing into the night. I zoomed in on the footage, the hatch, the keypad. She had a bunker, just like mine. The next morning, my phone rang. Gerald Simmons, the same treasurer who helped turn the tide at the last meeting. They're fighting back, he said flatly. Karen's loyalists are calling for a recall vote. They say you're a corporate plant, buying up houses to take control. I almost laughed. They're defending a woman who tore down my garage without warning? They're saying it was legally justified under an emergency clause. And my majority stake? They're calling it unethical, predatory. They filed an injunction to remove you as HOA chair. Karen had failed to stop me at the meeting. Now she was trying to erase the entire vote. I forwarded the bunker footage to my lawyer. Then I stared at the shed footage again. Why would Karen need a bunker? What was in that folder she clutched like a ticking bomb? I couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was buried under her perfect rose garden. Something she didn't just want to hide. Something she built an entire HOA to protect. The plan was simple. Execution, terrifying. At 2:11 a.m., dressed in black, I parked 2 blocks away and approached Karen's backyard on foot. The grass was too perfect, every hedge manicured like it was afraid to disappoint her. But I wasn't there to admire the landscaping. I reached the shed. Rusty hinges, reinforced lock, faint keypad glow. I didn't guess the code. I already knew it from the footage. 0403. Her birthday. A soft beep. The lock clicked open. The hatch opened with a groan, and a wave of cold, musty air escaped. I climbed down, 1 metal step at a time, into the dark. 10 feet. Then 20. And suddenly, the walls opened. Not a basement. A surveillance chamber. Monitors everywhere, stacked, blinking, labeled. I saw feeds of backyards, driveways, garages, windows, bedrooms. Karen hadn't just watched me. She'd watched everyone. Mrs. Rodriguez brushing her hair, Mr. Chen grading papers, kids playing in inflatable pools, and next to the monitors, metal filing cabinets, each drawer labeled with names of families. I opened one. Thompson, Garage Ope. Inside, blueprints of my house, photos of my driveway from angles I'd never seen, satellite overlays with the word, primary compromise objective. The demolition wasn't reactionary. It was deliberate. She'd known about my underground system. She'd wanted to destroy it. And she almost had. I pulled the folder, tucked it into my coat, and turned to leave. But a sound above made my blood run cold. Footsteps. Heavy. Familiar. A soft creak. I killed the lights and backed into the shadows. Then slowly, silently, I climbed up and out. Just in time to see Karen's SUV pulling into the driveway. Headlights off. Window cracked. Watching. I bolted toward the fence, heart pounding, just as her porch light flicked on. For a second, our eyes locked. Her expression wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was certainty. Like she'd planned for this. Expected me. I made it back home and slammed the door shut behind me. Tossed the folder onto the kitchen table and flipped it open. What I saw made my hands shake. Karen wasn't just collecting information. She was fabricating it. Photoshopped invoices from my construction business, faked emails implying tax fraud, surveillance screenshots of my wife labeled with emotional leverage, and worse, folders for other neighbors too. Mr. Chen's file, planted evidence of chemicals in his shed. Mrs. Johnson's medical records. Forged notes about mental decline. Karen didn't wait for mistakes. She created them. And now, she had built an entire bunker to store it all. This wasn't just a power grab. It was a shadow government. Her HOA was a machine. And she was its queen. And unless I moved fast, she would use that machine to destroy every single one of us. Sunlight filtered through the blinds as I stared at the folder on my kitchen table. 33 names. 33 families, each one with a target on their back. Karen didn't just monitor us, she documented, distorted, and designed entire alternate realities. If I stayed silent, she'd win. If I spoke, I'd be the villain in her version of the story. So I chose something else. Truth. At 7:48 a.m., I drove to the Meadow Creek Gazette. Tanya, the editor who'd covered the HOA revolt, met me at the front door with a steaming mug of coffee and a raised eyebrow. "You said it was big," she muttered. I dropped the flash drive on her desk. "It's nuclear." The story dropped at noon. HOA, president spied on dozens, forged documents, framed residents, screenshots, audio files, footage, carefully redacted but damning. Within an hour, our neighborhood Facebook group exploded. Messages poured in. She made up violations. She had my emails. She tracked my kids. The HOA tip line crashed. By 3 p.m., local news stations were parked outside my gate. But just as it seemed like the town had turned, Karen made her move. A polished podium, her immaculate lawn, a wall of reporters. She emerged with her signature pastel suit, dark sunglasses, and 2 lawyers behind her like bodyguards. The so-called whistleblower, she said, illegally accessed my private home, stole confidential HOA records, and weaponized them in a campaign of harassment. She paused, breathing deeply for effect. We have filed a formal complaint with the district attorney against Mr. James Thompson. I watched the broadcast in disbelief. Karen had just pulled the ultimate pivot, casting me as the criminal. My phone rang. It was Nathan, my attorney. She filed a motion for an emergency restraining order, he said grimly. They're claiming you're stalking her, spreading false information, and endangering public safety. I stared at the screen. They're flipping the narrative. Nathan sighed. If she convinces a judge that what you released was stolen property, even if it's damning, you could be legally liable. The walls were closing in. And then, it got worse. An email landed in my inbox. No subject, no sender, just an attachment. A single zip file. Inside, high-res surveillance footage. Of me. Not from my cameras. From hidden angles, tree-mounted cams, street poles, even a birdhouse. She'd tapped my system. She'd been watching me. And if she had this, what else did she still have? Karen hadn't lost. She had evolved. And now? She was weaponizing the story. I turned back to the folder on the table. Each forged violation, each twisted narrative. And suddenly, I realized something chilling. This wasn't a scandal. It was a campaign. And I was never her only target. Rain hammered the roof as I sat alone in Grandpa's old study, fingers tracing the edges of the worn desk. A message flashed on my phone. Gerald Jenkins, the former HOA treasurer who'd stood beside me in the vote. You need to see this. Tonight. My garage. Come alone. 40 minutes later, I was standing inside his cramped workshop, lit by a single flickering bulb. Gerald pulled the door shut behind us, his hands trembling. I found something, he whispered, holding up a flash drive. Karen thought she deleted these. Back at the farmhouse, I plugged in the drive. Hundreds of files, deleted emails, obscured payment logs, encrypted zips. Then I found it. Subject: Operation Watchtower, Phase 2. Prep from cranolds@sunnyhoa.org to d.holloway@argusrecon.com. Full placement before Meadow Creek vote. Focus on Thompson, Chen, Rodriguez. Make sure Mrs. Johnson's medical files look credible. We need the compassion narrative ready if the leak happens early. K. She'd planned every step, planting fake medical records for Mrs. Johnson to paint her as confused, in case someone questioned the board's choices. Scripting the board's sympathy PR push to deflect blame. I felt sick. But then came the real bombshell. A resignation letter. Dated 3 months ago. To the families of Sunny Pines, I never imagined my dedication to this community would become the target of such cruelty. For my health and the stability of the neighborhood, I will be stepping down effective immediately. It was pre-written, emotionally rehearsed. Karen had planned to fake a breakdown, step away from the chaos, and let someone else take the fall. But then, she got greedy. She thought she could win. Just as I closed the file, another folder caught my eye. From Javassel@reynoldslaw.org to kreynolds@sunnyhoa.org. Karen, we need to talk. You said everything was above board, but these surveillance contracts, these forged invoices, I'm not going down for this. If anyone asks, I'll say you hid it from me. Don't contact me again. Her own lawyer was bailing out. The cracks in her empire weren't forming, they were splitting wide open. The next morning, I walked into the county clerk's office with Gerald's affidavit and the drive. The clerk flipped through the folders, her face pale. "You're saying this isn't from a TV show?" "No," I said. "It's from Karen's basement." By noon, the county had frozen the HOA's discretionary accounts. That evening, a county investigator showed up at Karen's front door. And by morning, the headline read, "Leaked emails reveal HOA president faked evidence, framed residents, abused funds." The hammer had finally dropped. But just when I thought it was over, Karen stepped in front of a camera one last time. I should have felt victorious. The county had launched a full investigation. The HOA's funds were frozen. Karen's secrets were out. But peace never came. Because 24 hours after the story broke, she reappeared, on her own front lawn, with a podium, 2 attorneys, and a film crew. She stood beneath her manicured rose trellis, wearing oversized sunglasses and a white blazer like a news anchor preparing for battle. "Let me be clear," she began, her voice shaking just enough to sound rehearsed. "This is a targeted campaign to assassinate my character." She clutched the mic. "Yes, mistakes were made, but I acted in the best interest of this neighborhood. Always." Her lips quivered. "I'm not the villain here. I'm the victim of illegal surveillance and theft." Then came the dagger. "We have filed a formal complaint against Mr. James Thompson for breaking and entering, theft of confidential property, and community endangerment." I watched the live stream from my study, coffee untouched. Karen wasn't defending herself. She was flipping the script. She had become the victim. My phone buzzed. Nathan, my attorney. "She's not bluffing," he said. "They filed an emergency motion this morning. You're named in the complaint." I felt the air leave the room. "She broke into people's lives," I said. "She had blackmail files on children." "I agree. But if she convinces a judge that you accessed them illegally, without consent, it won't matter what's in those files." She wasn't fighting for control anymore. She was fighting to muddy the water, turn facts into doubts, truth into context. "She's trying to bury the evidence under legal noise," I said. "She's trying to bury you with it," Nathan replied. And then it got worse. An anonymous email landed in my inbox. No subject, no message, just a zip file. Inside, surveillance footage of my own home. Not mine, not from my cameras. These were external, high-res, night vision angles. From trees, lampposts, a birdhouse across the street. Angles even my bunker hadn't seen. She had tapped into my security system. Karen had been watching me, watching the watcher. And that meant she knew everything. The files I leaked? They weren't the only ones. She had backups, maybe multiple copies, maybe even off-site storage. That meant if I pushed too hard, she could release edited footage, fake documents, or worse, plant evidence I'd never see coming. She wasn't just playing defense anymore. She was playing legacy chess, and I'd walked right into the middle of the board. That night, I sat on the porch, staring across the darkened neighborhood. No wind, no voices, just the hum of distant streetlights and a heaviness in the air that wouldn't lift. I thought I'd torn down the regime. But power like Karen's doesn't die. It evolves, and it already had. The next morning, a new flyer was taped to my windshield. The HOA coup. What James Thompson doesn't want you to know. Glossy paper. Bullet points. Anonymous source. Owns more homes than he claims. Profiting from community chaos. Wants to raise dues to fund his empire. It was absurd. But lies don't have to be smart. They just have to spread. Online forums lit up. Old neighbors started avoiding me. Whispers of power grab, invasion, deep pockets. And then came the final blow. A new vote. To remove me as HOA chair. Not organized by Karen, but by someone new. Someone worse. Derek Holloway, CEO of Argus Recon. Karen's private security contractor. He wasn't just cleaning up her mess, he was stepping into her throne. And he had money, signs, and a list of endorsements. The queen had fallen. But the shadow she cast had only just begun. Election day. Rain tapped against the windows like a ticking clock. The sky hung heavy over Meadowview, swollen with gray and silence. But inside the community center, chaos simmered beneath politeness. Volunteers passed out ballots. Derek Holloway stood at the front, grinning like a man already wearing the crown. Branded polo shirt, polished shoes, backers lining the walls. I took my seat in the back row. No campaign flyers, no team. Just a flash drive in my pocket. And a letter from my grandfather clutched in my hand. He'd written it years ago, tucked away in his old notebook labeled Legacy. If they ever twist the truth, go to the safe beneath the workbench. That's where I found the final piece. A cassette tape, labeled Reynolds, February 19th, 9:36 p.m. I stepped onto the stage. "Many of you don't trust me anymore," I said, voice steady. "And maybe you shouldn't. Not until you hear this." I held up the tape. The audio crackled, then clicked into focus. Karen's voice, unmistakable. "We just need it rezoned. Pay Harris whatever it takes." "Karen, we can't fake a vote. We'll blame Thompson. No one trusts him anyway." Gasps echoed through the hall. Then came the images, projected onto the screen. HOA invoices billed by Argus Recon for neighborhood patrols, showing GPS logs parked in Derek's own driveway. Documents signed by a concerned homeowner. Everyone traced back to an IP address labeled Argus HQ office. Fake complaints, forged fines, false narratives. I let the silence settle, then said just one sentence. "This isn't about me, it's about all of us." The vote was swift. Derek lost. The room didn't cheer. It exhaled, like a house finally freed from smoke. As people hugged, thanked, and quietly wept, I stepped outside into the rain. Not victorious, not triumphant, just free. And then, something unexpected. Mrs. Rodriguez approached me with a warm smile and a folded paper. "We've been working on something," she said. "A new charter. One that protects residents, not power." Inside, 5 names were listed. One from each corner of the neighborhood. They wanted me to lead it. I shook my head. "You don't need me anymore." She nodded, understanding. I guess that's the point. Weeks passed. Karen moved out quietly, under the radar. Her house was sold at a loss. Her last act? A letter claiming the neighborhood had lost its standards. We never replied. Instead, we built a community garden where my garage once stood. Kids play there now. Elderly neighbors sit and sip coffee. The basketball hoop is back. So are the wind chimes. The HOA still exists. But now, it defends us. Not polices us. And me? I walk Baxter every evening, wave to neighbors who wave back, and smile every time I pass by the shed in my yard, the one where the storm began. Victory didn't come from power. It came from letting go of the need for it. I thought I needed to beat Karen, but what I really needed was to show everyone else they could too. Because the most dangerous thing about fear is how long people live with it before they realize they don't have to.